So last week, we began this series and we took a different approach. This series is called Broken Branches, and we kind of took a different approach. Is the topic we're driving or diving into this topic of the family, and we know that there are biblical roles to fulfill. So when you look at the family unit itself, we know that there's unique scripture references to what each individual member of the family is called to fulfill. However, unfortunately, from the moment family starts, from the very beginning, when you open your eyes and you get brought into that unit, it starts with some level of brokenness. Would you agree with me? Okay? You walk into a scenario as a child or as a husband or as an uncle, as a brother, as a dad, as whatever you want to call it. And in one level or another, when you walk into that dynamic or that unit that you're brought into through one angle or another, there's already some sort of dysfunction or some sort of brokenness that we're having to face. Most of us ignore it, avoid it. All right. I told you last week that if you don't have that crazy family member in your family, then that is bad news for you. Because if you say, my family, I don't know who that guy is. It's you. No. And when we wonder, okay, if this all started and was initiated this way, okay, why? How did it come to pass? And last week we talked about the first family that allowed brokenness to enter, carrying this ripple effect that is still reaching us even today. When Adam and Eve sinned, moral and spiritual death came immediately. We had to deal with that instantly. When they defied God and rejected the simple instructions that God gave them, they brought ruin, hardship, and suffering not only to themselves, but to the rest of the entire creation. That's why we get mad at Adam and Eve. And we want to question them and ask them all kinds of questions. And we don't like it. And Eve, why did you do it? And Adam, right? Unfortunately, today, we have to understand that no matter what took place, this is our starting baseline when it comes to our families. It's the bad news, okay? You say, Moises, but I see happy families all the time. There is some level of dysfunction and brokenness in all of them. And I'm not saying that just to give you happy feelings or sympathize with you. The reality of it is that you may think you have the worst family or you may think you have the best family. All of us walked into some brokenness and dysfunction at some level or another, unfortunately. However, when we say, so Moises, we are all born into broken scenarios to one extent or the other, that does not mean that we should settle in that environment. That's like saying, well, we're all born sinners, so therefore we should just sin and not worry about it. That is not what we're called to do. Please understand that the promise that was given to Eve about the head of the snake being crushed took place. We have the ability and the tools given to us and the instructions that we need in order to make things better. This isn't organically going to happen. It's going to take some intentional shifting and moving and decision making that truly impacts the family. However, taking this approach and assuming all these things may be more difficult than we think. Therefore, you and I can stand firm today, and even in the middle of our mess, say, I may have a mess. Say it. I have a mess. You know, some people are like, May, forget it. I have a mess, Pastor. It's here. It's live. I see it every day, okay? and know that we have all the tools necessary to combat whatever dysfunction we're facing. Some things in the family are just not going to make sense. Some dynamics and relationships are just not going to work out like you thought they would. However, how you play the hand that you've been dealt really makes a difference. It really matters. We see this story in Genesis chapter 37. We see a character named Joseph. It's an amazing, powerful story, and it's a story packed with amazing events of sadness and victories. But overall, Joseph's story emphasizes that although righteous people suffer in this evil and unjust world, God's purpose for them ultimately will prevail. But very early on, what we notice in the story is a father that by his own doing begins to plant this sort of dysfunction and brokenness into his entire family dynamic. What I want you to realize, and we kind of left off with this last week, is that you are more responsible for that dynamic than you think. How many people know that the wrong choices, the wrong decisions could have horrible consequences in the family overall? You're not just the only one being affected. There's other people around you being affected. I told you about Sebastian, right? Watch me cook, Dad, right? He's a sponge. He's getting everything I'm giving him. And without realizing it, I may be making a comment to the TV, talking to some sports team on the TV, and relaying the message to a basketball player that's not listening to me. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm having this conversation with my TV, and my son Sebastian is just sitting there listening to everything I'm saying. And he develops his character, okay? His coach told me yesterday, if we could just get him to stop dancing, man. Okay? Because he thinks he's a celebrity, all right? He caught a ball yesterday, and the coach says, good job, Bash, and he goes. And the coach is like, I can't believe it. I said, he learned that from his mom, bro. It's not me, I promise you, okay? But there is this old African proverb that says, if we don't initiate the boys, they will tear down the village. It's important. We are not necessarily finger pointing here, but with clarity, I want us to help us and see the details of our actions and the impact that it results on what we do and how it hurts others. I tell the leadership team of this church all the time, the right leader will build it and the right leader can destroy it. The right builds it, the wrong destroys it. Okay? It can happen. You have more power than you think. You think this family dynamic just happens to you. Okay? But I want you to focus this morning and understand that it's not just happening to you. There are things taking place that are causing the results that you're seeing. That you may be able to do one thing or another to be able to drive the dynamic a different direction. And brokenness does not have to be. It can be mended. When it comes to Joseph, we talk about the story and the highlights of the suffering and the evil Joseph faced, but we like to talk about how unjust he was treated. And when we read the story, we very quickly see that there is a root cause that takes place. That there's a root cause. Because dysfunction with Joseph doesn't just happen out of thin air. It isn't that he's just born into a horrible scenario. It comes from somewhere. Have you ever been set up for failure in life? With one decision or another? I always tell a story about my dad making me take French as an elective. Okay? We're at the counselor's office in high school. Eddie goes before me. Obviously, Eddie is the favorite. I'm not, but we're not. That's not for today. That's for another day. Okay? And we get there. Eddie says, my elective will be AP Spanish. What? This guy already knows Spanish. What a cop-out. Eddie looks at me and says, easy A, bro. That gets my GPA up. I'm like, great idea, big brother. Maybe I should follow into your footsteps. So when the lady gets to me, I say, I'll take AP Spanish, please. And my dad said, whoa, Moises, you already know Spanish. You should learn something new. I'm like, okay, Dad, let's experiment with me then, I guess. So I listened to his advice. I end up taking French and I failed. Okay? Eddie got a thriving A, okay, on that class of AP Spanish, which he struggled with a lot, but he got through it, okay? So it hurt my GPA. That's just one example. But the decisions that we make, I don't think my dad was purposely trying to set me up for failure. His explanation makes sense. You know, I knew 70% English. I still probably know about 90% English. But I knew Spanish and English at the time. And I said he said, what if you learn a third language? That would be great. You'll know 3 languages, Moises. I don't know why I picked French, okay? It was just on the paper. And then you say, why did you fail? I was a bad student, number 1. Number 2, French is very similar to Spanish, okay? You say 0 in Spanish is cero. In French is zero. I mean, uno, un, right? So I'm like, you know, I'm telling the teacher, she'll say, Moises, say 0. I'm like, zero. She's like, no, zero. I'm like, no, zero. No, zero. No, zero. I'm like, oh, I can't figure this out. Okay? I'm not going to get it. Okay? So I ended up failing the class. Un, deux, trois, quatre. I mean, my goodness, it's like Spanish, right? In Spanish, a car, okay, is coche, okay? In English, it's like, in French, it's like coche, right? And I'm like, it's not coming out. My brain couldn't figure out how to cause the divide of pronouncing those things. So I tried and I failed and I looked at my dad and my dad said, you tried, but my GPA wasn't fixed because of it, okay? Very early on, we see that there's a root cause that causes this event to take place. And here we go, Genesis 37, 2-4, okay? This is the account of Jacob and his family. When Joseph was 17 years old, he often tended his father's flock. He worked for his half-brothers, the son of his father's wife, Bilhah and Silpah. But Joseph reported to his father some of the bad things his brothers were doing. We already don't like this guy. Snitches get stitches, right? It's what we say. No, we don't believe that here. But he was reporting to his father some of the bad things his brothers were doing. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him at his old age. Let me tell you something if you're a dad in the room. I know you'll never admit this in public, but if you have your favorites, keep it to yourself. You shouldn't have favorites. But if you do, keep it to yourself. Now, kids pick up on it no matter what you do, okay? But, try your best, okay? In this point, in this story, it was evident. So one day, Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe, okay? But his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. It wasn't because of the robe. Okay? They couldn't say kind words to him. And while many of us have heard the entire Joseph story, we can look at the beginning and begin to see what really caused the root of brokenness in the first place. Many of us wonder why Joseph was the way he was. It didn't seem like he was a very likable guy. He puts on the robe and he comes out with the robe. Like, here I am. Okay? He brags about it, okay? He has this dream, and he tells his brothers, I have a dream, right? So he's bragging to his brothers constantly, and you wonder, where did he get this character from? I wonder where. The Bible tells us that he used to tell his dad about all the things his brothers were doing. So there was already a dynamic here where Joseph not only acted a certain way, but he knew there was some favoritism involved. Now, I don't condone or justify the actions that were taken by his brothers because of this, or the feelings and take either side, but it is important to know that the result of what was created. Time magazine published a study from the Journal of Child and Family Studies that said every person needs 3 basic needs, okay? They must feel autonomous, competent, and connected to other people, okay? Jacob's favor towards Joseph creates a ripple effect that allows resentment to grow and rest on the other brothers. So while Jacob felt like he was expressing his love towards his son in a different way, okay, he was also ruining the dynamic of the entire family. And while his intentions, like my dad having me take French, were good, we sometimes need to take a step back and really analyze whether we are accomplishing what we really wanted to accomplish in the first place. Okay? My mom made me a picky eater. She would cook for me meals outside of the meals she would make for the rest of the family. Absolutely. Big no-no. Literally. And guess what? When I was a little kid, I loved her for it. Oh, that's my mom. Yeah, sorry guys. Eddie, just eat that, man. Dad, too bad. I'm eating this because mom knows what I like and she makes me this separate thing. And then when I grow up, my wife looks at me like, you what? That you don't like what? That you don't eat what? And I would step into situations. Could you imagine me on the mission field? Someone serving me food in some country somewhere, and I'm like, where's my mom? This is not what I eat. That'll get the gospel across to the world, wouldn't it? No, I don't think it was the best approach. My mom loved me and she was trying to express her love towards me. So I'm not knocking on her because of it, but it was difficult for me to get acquainted, right? I mean, I remember my first date to Rosie's house where I was invited. They made me my own personal pizza. The rest of the family is eating regular food. And they made me my own pepperoni pizza. I'm a grown-up. And I'm somehow sitting at that table thinking, this is okay. I love this family. When somebody should have smacked me in the face and say, grow up, eat what somebody's giving you, right? That came later. Rosie did that. Not that she hits me, okay? It was just verbally, okay? Now, in the case of Joseph, not only does it result in a negative dysfunction with his brothers, but it also has an effect on Joseph himself. Real quickly, verse 5-8. One night Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, he hated him more than ever. Listen to this dream. I mean, oh my goodness. If Eddie would have walked into the room with this dream to me, I would have gave him the same treatment that the brothers gave him, okay? He said, we're out in the field, tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly, my bundle stood up. And your bundles all gather around and bow low before mine. His brothers responded, so you think you will be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us? And they hated him all of the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. You see this dysfunction building. Now, calling isn't a bad thing, but we don't have to go very far to understand that Joseph's approach was aggressive and uncalled for, okay? Because David gets anointed as king, and what does he do? He goes back to the field to tend the sheep. Listen, this is two examples of calling, how you react to what you're called to do by God. Both divine callings. You will be king of Israel. You've been anointed as king. The next day, he's still tending the sheep, waiting on God. Joseph has a God moment. God tells him what he's going to do. It's a divine moment where everybody should be celebrated. And he comes out and said, brothers, you got to gather up. One day you're going to bow low before me. Who takes that message well? Right? That is because favoritism and comparison will negatively affect the fuel family and fuel family rivalry. They say that comparison is the beginning of discontentment. And nothing could be more true today. More than ever, our families are compared and connected with comparison. Because of the advancements in social media and the internet, we are able to see what family members that we would have never been connected to back in the day, what they're wearing every day. Literally. Some random uncle that saw me walking around in my diaper when I was little, I'm friends with him on Facebook. And I'm able to see where he goes, what he puts on, his kids that I've never met, what kind of, it has become so easy. And yet, again and again, it robs us of our peace, blinds us to see that what God is trying to accomplish through us and through them. And yet, as soon as you get a break today, the phone is back out and we're back to scrolling again. We know it doesn't make us feel better. We know we pull out our phones at our lowest moments to watch everybody's highlight reel. We know that has a negative effect in our lives, but yet, as soon as you get a break today, you're not doing it right now out of respect for the pastor. Thank you. But in this world, it has become easier than ever to be distracted from distractions by distractions. I fully believe that our coping mechanism is ignorance. The Western culture is arguably built around the denial of death through the coping mechanism of distraction. We don't want to see the world for its reality. We don't want to tackle the right things in life that we're supposed to be tackling. We just rather be distracted and ignorant to it. That's what we do with the dysfunction in our families. We ignore it. We kick the can down the road because we don't want to deal with it right now. The most powerful companies in the history of the world are working around the clock with the most sophisticated algorithms to work our fears and feed our anger by any means necessary. And if you want to have peace, there's a commandment for that. Don't covet. Don't covet. Stop coveting. Pay attention to your jealousy and eliminate it. Think about it. Usually what keeps us restless in pursuit of the unthinkable is a vision of something that was given to us in comparison to our current life. We say, we don't want to be like this. We would rather be like that. Right? Ask yourself, why do I want what I want? Why do I feel the certain way I feel about this family member? About the sibling? What's the connection? Because the root of dysfunction will drive you to act. Every behavior is motivated by a belief. Every action is prompted by an attitude. Proverbs 4:23 says, be careful how you think. Your life is shaped in the way of your thoughts. Okay? Now, there's a root to the dysfunction, and if we ignore it or leave it unattended, it builds wounds within the closest relationships that will be extremely hard to mend in the future. Now, to explain this a little bit further, I've invited someone that has an early. He's young and he has been gifted with an amazing speaking talent. He won an award of Superior at the state of North Carolina for best short sermon this past year, and competed at a national level, learning another award for a Superior award across the entire nation. And he's one of our very own here at Kingdom Church. We love him. We've known him since he was a young boy. So he's going to help me share this next part. Please help me welcome Stephen Prakash here to the platform.
Man, now I feel like I have to do really good. Well, as Pastor Moises said, my name is Stephen. I think this is probably going to be the longest sermon I've ever preached so far. So hopefully I do a pretty decent job. And as Pastor Moises was saying, when you allow these roots of dysfunction to just kind of build and build over time, you end up causing wounds and you end up hurting people that you care about. And these issues become very hard to solve in the future, which actually leads me to talk about the wounds of betrayal. Now, I'm sure you're probably all sick and tired of hearing about Pastor Moises talk about his older brother, Eddie. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about my younger brother, Matthew. Now, Matthew, before I get started, I just want to let you know I still love you, and hopefully by the end of it, you'll still love me, but we'll work that out later. So, who here has a sibling? Can you raise your hand if you have a sibling? Older brother, older sister, younger sister. Okay, it's a decent amount of you. So I'm sure we all know that our siblings can get on our nerves sometimes, or a lot of the times. But whatever happens, we usually end up working it out pretty easily, unlike what Joseph's brothers did. See, Pastor talked about Joseph being favored by his father, which ended up causing his brothers to resent him. In verses 18 to 20, it even says that they made fun of Joseph a lot and said that they should just throw him in a ditch and kill him. Now, I'm sure I've probably told my brother at least once or twice that I was so angry at him that I wanted to kill him. Now, obviously, I didn't mean this. And quite honestly, I think the worst arguments we've ever had, usually after around 3 hours, or if it's really bad, we wait until the next day, then we make up and we talk to each other again. We usually don't go as far as Joseph's brothers went. So in verses 22 to 28, we can actually read about this. We actually see Joseph's brother Reuben saying, "Why should we shed any blood? Let's throw him into this empty cistern here in the wilderness. Then he'll die without our laying a hand on him." Reuben was secretly planning to rescue Joseph and return him to his father. See, even here, Reuben realizes that killing Joseph isn't the right thing to do, and he still wants to allow him to live and go back to his family. But unfortunately for Joseph, that doesn't pan out. Verse 23, "So when Joseph arrived, his brothers ripped off the beautiful robe he was wearing. Then they grabbed him and threw him into the cistern. Now the cistern was empty. There was no water in it. Then, just as they were sitting down to eat, they looked and saw a caravan of camels in the distance, coming towards them. It was a group of Ishmaelite traders taking a load of gum, balm, and aromatic resin from Gilead down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, 'What will we gain by killing our brother? We'd have to cover up the crime.' That's the biggest issue here. 'Instead of hurting him, let's sell him to those Ishmaelite traders. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood.' And his brothers agreed. So when the Ishmaelites, who were Midianite traders, came by, Joseph's brothers pulled him out of the cistern and sold him to them for 20 pieces of silver, and the traders took him to Egypt. Joseph was sold out by his own brothers as a slave into Egypt for a mere 20 pieces of silver. Can you imagine being thrown out by your own family just because your parents like you more? Matthew, I hope that you don't do this to me just because I'm the favorite, but hopefully that doesn't happen. But the Bible says he was sold for 20 pieces of silver. 20 pieces of silver is around $150 in today's money. Can you imagine selling out your own brother or sister for $150? That's basically nothing in exchange for the life of someone. You could probably earn more than $150 just by selling all of the things in your room. And that's how little they valued Joseph's life when they sold him out into slavery. Just imagine this. God gives us family to protect us, to love on us, and to be with us no matter what. But Joseph's brothers betrayed him in this instance. See, you'll remember last week that Pastor Moises talked about Adam and Eve, the first man and first woman in the Bible. Well, Adam and Eve also had two sons, Cain and Abel, the first brothers, who will help me kind of exemplify and illustrate the ties that God wants us to instill in our family and the issues that come with betraying your own brother. Cain and Abel used to work in the fields. And one day, they were offering sacrifices to God, and Cain offered some of his harvest, and Abel offered the best of his sheep, the best in his flock. God was very pleased with Abel's offering, so he was looking more favorably upon Abel. Cain couldn't bear to see his brother more happy than he was, so he ended up killing Abel. As a result of this, God curses Cain for the rest of his life forcing him to wander the earth in pain and never be able to harvest crops again. This shows from even the earliest of times how much God values family and doesn't want us to turn on our own families. So imagine how hard it must have been for Joseph to have his own brothers turn on him and betray him like that. See, some of you might be feeling the same way, like everything is going south, like your family might be abandoning you, or that you have been sold out to sin and left to rot. We all go through times where we feel alone and when we feel separated from our family, and it's the worst. I want you to know that even if your family turns your back on you and the world turns their back on you, God will never turn his back on you. He always will be and always is working for you. See, this isn't the end of Joseph's story when he's sold into slavery. He ends up doing great things in Egypt because God is with him. No matter who or what hurt you, know that God is with you and that Jesus has died on the cross for you and that he has great things planned for you in the future, no matter your situation. Now, church, I want you to take a second to acknowledge where it may be that family might have hurt you in the past or that someone has hurt you. Maybe they didn't accept a part of you. Maybe they don't accept your faith or another issue that has come up in the past. But I want you to just remember it, recall it, and think of it. I'm not going to ask you to get rid of it from your heart right here, but I want you to keep it with you as we continue. See, as I mentioned before, God was with Joseph when he was in Egypt. The Bible actually says that every single thing Joseph touched flourished and prospered. And after a while, Joseph climbs up the ranks and becomes the second most powerful person in Egypt, second to only the Pharaoh. During this time, there was also a famine. There was a great famine in Egypt, and no one was able to survive without food. This famine had been going on for 2 years, and the surrounding area was also in hunger. And since everyone was out of food, including Joseph's brothers, they had to go to Egypt to buy food. Now, I asked you earlier to remember a time where someone had hurt you. And now I'm going to get into the road to forgiveness, which is how you can learn to forgive whoever has hurt you in the past. When Joseph's brothers were out buying food in Egypt, he sees them and recognizes them, even though they don't recognize him in this moment. After a while, he decides to reveal his identity to his brothers and begin the process of forgiveness. We can read this in Genesis chapter 45, verses 1 through 8. Joseph could stand it no longer. There were so many people in the room, and he said to his attendants, "Out, all of you." So he was alone with his brothers when he told them who he was. Then he broke down and wept. He wept so loudly that the Egyptians could hear him, and word of it quickly carried to Pharaoh's palace. See, church, Joseph is weeping here. And I think this is significant because no matter how we view it, Joseph is pained and betrayed by whoever hurt him and his brothers selling him out into slavery. No matter who has hurt you, even if you are trying to get to forgiveness, it is okay to feel sadness and to feel hurt. Even Joseph feels it in this moment because it is so terribly bad to have the people who you trust betray you. Verse 3, "I am Joseph," he said to his brothers. "Is my father still alive?" But his brothers were speechless. They were stunned to realize that Joseph was standing there in front of them. "Please come closer," he said to them. So they came closer. And he said again, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery in Egypt. But don't be upset and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives. This famine that has ravaged the land for 2 years will last 5 more years, and there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. God has sent me ahead of you to keep you and your families alive and to preserve many survivors. So it was God who sent me here, not you. And he is the one who made me advisor to Pharaoh, the manager of this entire palace and governor over all of Egypt." Here, Joseph decides to forgive his brothers. He tells them not to be angry with themselves because even though they meant to cause him harm, God turned Joseph's situation into a miracle. God planned everything from the start for this moment. All of the suffering that Joseph endured, all of the pain he felt, was so that when this famine hit, he would be in the position to save his brothers. Joseph actually ends up saying in Genesis chapter 50 that you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. See, Joseph's brothers wanted to hurt him, but God turned the situation around. Even if someone has hurt you in your life, God might be using it so that you can come out stronger in the end. Joseph was thrown out by his brothers, and God used his brokenness to do great things. This is almost like recycling, where we take out junk that we don't need and we throw it out into the garbage. And then eventually it gets into a processing plant, we process it, and we make something new with it that can be used. To give an example, I recently participated in a boat building competition with my school. And what we did is we took t-shirts from the lost and found that were used and worn and thrown out, and we recycled them. And we used them in our boat to make it float down the rapids. We ended up having a lot of success with this. And in the same way, God can take something that is insignificant, worn, used, and thrown out, use it to create something new, and have a lot of success in spreading his word and doing mighty things in his name. The Bible actually says that God doesn't put us in situations we can't handle, and that he will always provide ways out for us to endure anything that we come across. Even if you feel alone and you feel like your situation is helpless and there's nothing you can do, know that God is with you and he will provide a way out for you. See, the sermon series is actually called Broken Branches, but I want you to think of it as more than just branches being broken. See, when a branch falls away from the tree, it is sometimes able to give birth to new life and a new tree can sprout. In the story, Joseph was separated from his family. He's a broken branch that has fallen off from the main tree. But God allowed Joseph to do many things and grow. However, even if a branch falls away from the tree and it grows, it's still in the same location as its original tree, and it eventually has to share the soil and runs into the roots of the tree it was once a part of. God knew that Joseph needed to have closure with his brothers. That's why he actually brought them back into Egypt to see Joseph again. We may think that we can sometimes move beyond the brokenness and hurt that we feel in our lives. See, what Joseph actually did to cope with this was pretty funny. He named one of his sons Manasseh, which actually means God made me forget all of my troubles and I have forgotten my father's family. Joseph wanted to forget his father's family and move on. But let's be honest, if you're naming your kid that, you quite honestly are not moving on. So that's how Joseph tried to cope with this. So, knowing this, God actually brought his brothers back before him. I wonder if this is because God knew that he needed to forgive them in order to move on. I asked you earlier to remember hurt in your hearts, and now I want you to imagine talking to whoever hurt you. What would you say to them? Would you say anything at all? Maybe you just need to weep and cry like Joseph did. Maybe you just need a second to just take it all in and then say something. Whatever it is, I hope that you would be able to find it in your heart to try to forgive, just as Joseph had in order to set the past behind you. Forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting, and no matter what has hurt you in the past, it may still cling to you, but it is the first step towards being able to move on with your life. I would like to ask Pastor Moises now to come back up and wrap everything up.
You got it. Man, I wasn't like 1/3 the preacher Stephen is when I was his age. Not even like zero. So I love seeing him grow in his ministry. I know God has something special. Matthew, you're good, man. We love you, brother. So we know God is involved, and I'll land this plane. And we know God is involved in every aspect. So for us to sit here today and say, well, God is not involved in my family dynamic. He hasn't really gotten into this part of my life. I still struggle with this. It's not really true. By the story of Joseph, we begin to see how everything is in order and put in place. And you wonder, why is there a need for me to pursue forgiveness? And I would finish out by saying, because there's power in forgiveness. Because there's power in forgiveness. See, Forgiveness doesn't change the past. It doesn't change betrayal. It changes you. Forgiveness is not saying what took place is okay. It's saying I won't let it control me. See, once you experience true forgiveness, you realize that forgiveness was just giving up hope of a better past. It truly has the power to make you free moving forward. Colossians 3:13 says, make allowance for each other's faults and forgive how many people? Anyone who offends you. Why? Because the Lord first forgave you. God isn't asking us to do something He hasn't already done for us. The Greek term, which means forgive, is found 140 times in the New Testament. And it means to let go, to leave behind, to dismiss, and to even forget debt. God is only asking us as people, as individuals, as believers in Jesus Christ, to give only a portion of all that we have been given. Jesus teaches us that there should be no compromise in our readiness or willingness to forgive the offense of other people. And yet again, if I ask with a show of hands, have you forgiven 100% of the people that have betrayed you, that have wounded you, that have caused you pain in the past? All of us will lift our hands in the room at fault because we have not done. Holding on to unforgiveness is a sin. Why? Because of the bitterness and destruction it can bring into our own spirit. Not only that, but most importantly, it fails to reflect God's character in our own lives. Did you know that God uses your ability to forgive as a measuring tool in how He forgives you? You're like, no way. I'm forgiven, set free, I'm good. But there's somehow scriptural evidence that you could touch back and say, is God really washing how my character approaches other people and how I decide to interact with situations? Because if God is involved in our mess, and He's all over it and has specific and purposeful intentions for it, then that means that the only person left to deal with is us. This is what Matthew 18:34-35 says. Then the angry king sent the man to prison to be tortured until he had paid his entire debt. You're like, what a horrible king. That's what my heavenly Father will do to you if you refuse to forgive your brothers and sisters from your heart. Just level the playing field. Now we're talking. God's ability to forgive is measured by our decision to forgive in a lot of ways. Maybe not related to eternity, but related to consequences and actions that we take and the favor and blessing that we want to see from God. Could it be that the problem we are having is not necessarily that God isn't involved? Is that we're not taking the necessary steps to mend the proper way in order to move forward. Forgiveness is not only given when it's earned. In fact, if somebody does something right or mends their mistake, then they did a right for their wrong, and there's no need for forgiveness. You know, people are so tough on showing forgiveness to other people because they misunderstand trust and all this other stuff. But can you find a way to break free from bitterness today and forgive? You know, Stephen called us to that moment, that difficult place, that difficult individual, that person that we have a struggle coping with or dealing with or figuring out what to do. And my question is, will you choose forgiveness even if it's undeserved this morning? Will you decide to say, okay, I'm going to take this step in my life and forgive. Not as a statement. The Bible says, your brothers and sisters from your heart. I believe God wants us to turn our pain. He wants to turn our pain into purpose. And forgiveness, like Stephen said, is the first step. I'm not making what you went through something small or simple. If we were to share our examples in this house today and say, you don't understand what I went through. You don't understand what that person did to me. You don't understand how difficult it was to overcome the pressure and the things that I experienced. They abused me. They did horrible things to me. It was a horrible thing that had took place in my life. I'm not saying that those things aren't real. It was still hurtful. Stephen gave us an example when Joseph went back in the room and cried and wept for the pain that he was facing. Did you know that that resentment and that pain remain even to the end of Genesis in chapter 50? Later on, when Jacob dies, the brothers think, wait a second. Now dad is not around. I think Joseph is only keeping us alive. We don't trust this thing. He's being nice to us all of a sudden. Now that my dad Jacob is dead, this guy is going to come after us and kill us. So the Bible says that the brothers got together, wrote a letter to Joseph after Jacob died, and said, this is what my father says. And it's found in last verse, in verse 17 of chapter 50. He says, please forgive your brothers for the great wrong they did to you. For their sin in treating you so cruelly. So we, the servants of God, of your father, beg you to forgive our sin. When Joseph received the message, he broke down and wept. Because it was painful. Because he too was still struggling with it. Because even after he made the decision to forgive his brothers, there was still pain for what had taken place. Nobody's making what happened to us something small or something to forgive and forget about. But forgiveness is necessary. It's how we are set free moving forward. You are going to choose one compromise this morning. And I'm encouraging you for that to be forgiveness, not bitterness, not resentment, not pride. It's funny because Joseph said after he weeps and breaks down, he said, am I God or something? In other words, you're going to pay for what you did, or God is going to take care of you. I'm not God. And he witnesses to them again and says, I was sent here to save even more lives than just you. Because of what God did through my life, I've been able to feed people through this famine. And in verse 21, he says, don't be afraid. I will continue to take care of you and your children. So he reassured them by speaking kindly to them. See, in chapter 37, the brothers couldn't say kind words to Joseph because of how he was. And Joseph, at the end of chapter 50, speaks kindly words to them. Literally kills them with his kindness. He said, I'm going to be what you're not. I'm going to show you something that you've never seen before. My approach is going to be so different. It's going to catch you off guard. You think I'm coming after you? You think I got resentment? You think I'm trying to be vindictive towards your life? I'm not going to do that at all. I'm going to forgive and literally continue to take care of you and your children. And sometimes the best part of the healing of our wounds is the knowledge that they are not being wasted. I got 2 guarantees for you today. You accept forgiveness from Christ right now and you're set free. You pass that forgiveness to others and you will also be set free. You pick number 1, you pick number 2, you pick both of them, and in any situation, peace and freedom would enter into your life. I'm a firm believer in that. You want peace? I would ask you to experience freedom in and out this morning. I don't know your personal situation. I don't know the dynamic with the family member. I don't know who it is. I don't know what the contention is in your personal family. But today you have the opportunity to experience forgiveness, both in and out.